Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Flo and today's video is going to be the best books that I have read this year. I should caveat this and say that I am currently filming this mid-December because I'm going to my parents' house next weekend for Christmas, and I really wanted to do this video right at the end because I think I read between like 10 and 15 books a month, and so obviously we're not at the end of the year yet, so I could have so many other books to add to this video, but I do not want to lug all of the books that I rated 5-star or want to talk about in this video all the way back to Bristol. So I'm filming this early, and then if I have any other books that I loved, you'll hear about them in next week's video because that will be my December reading wrap up. So I will make sure to talk about them on there if I wish any of them would have made this video. But let's get into it. Let's talk about the best books. So I went through my Goodreads from January to now and I've picked the best books. And when I say the best books of 2023, I don't just mean 5-star, I mean ones that were, yes, 5-star, but ones I literally could not stop thinking about and I'm still thinking about at the end of the year. So like, it's funny, isn't it, when you rate books, because I keep thinking about this. When you only rate them, like on Goodreads, it's only out of 5 stars. I think if it was 10 stars, these would be my 10-star books. Hi. I don't know if you can see her. Lola's back because you know it's another video and you want to be on camera. You want to come here? You're going to tell them about all the best books we've read this year? The ones that you've had to emotionally support me through. Talking about rating, I keep thinking about the 5-star rating system and how it's so narrow, isn't it? Because I feel like when you get 10 stars and you can rate something out of 10, the ones you would rate 10 out of 10 would be these ones. Whereas like I have rated other books throughout the year 5 stars, but if it was a 10-star rating system, I probably would have rated 9. If that makes any sense. But I guess some people do half ratings and I've been trying to do that a little bit more, but there is no method to my madness. I don't typically use half-star ratings because it's hard to then see on Goodreads when you get to the end of the year and you're looking back. I never write comments and saying like, oh, I actually rated this 3.5 or I actually rated this 4.5. I just normally put 3, 4 or 5 stars and then I never really leave a comment. Although there have been some books in this wrap up where I have left comments because they needed a comment because they just blew me out of the water. But a lot of people love using Goodreads to like do the page number update or to constantly talk about how they feel about a book. But I'm really lazy. I just put if I'm currently reading it, if I want to read it sometimes, but I use my Amazon wish list more as my like want to read list. See, I don't use it maybe as much as other people do. I never update the number of pages I've read. I never give word reviews. I normally just do stars, but I'm lazy. Anyway, let's get into my favourite books that I read this year that I have been thinking about ever since I've read them. So let's start with a BookTube classic, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. It follows Connell and Marianne. They are in high school together and Marianne is very quiet at school. She gets bullied and Connell is in the popular group, but he's also quiet, and it's basically I guess like a coming of age story, and it follows them throughout high school but then also university, and they have gaps in when they speak and when they come back together, but their love kind of always brings them back. And I just really found myself in these characters. I think I mentioned this book in the first videos I ever did on YouTube. I think this featured in my first YouTube video because I read it in summer. And my first video was my August reading wrap up. So yeah, I think that one was on here. So sorry if you've watched that video and you're hearing me talk about it again, but this book does need a repeat because not only have I been thinking about the book, but I have read this book, I watched the TV series, I have repeatedly watched the TV series and I've told all of my friends to watch it. I think it's one of those things. I'm currently watching Conversations with Friends and I didn't read the book because the book doesn't get rated as highly as this one, but I'm really loving that TV series as well. I think Sally Rooney just really knows how to talk about like something coming of age. I think she just really knows how to do these sort of topics of growing up and the pains of growing up justice. They're always full of like heartbreak and emotion. So I actually watched the TV series with my friends before I read the book, but it didn't ruin the book and the book is just so much better. But I think that's going to be me with Conversations with Friends. I think I will read it. And I know that sounds weird because a lot of people would rather read the book before they watch any series or anything on it, but I read somewhere actually that I think it's because of my anxiety. I like to know what happens in stories. So like if I'm watching a film, I will Google the synopsis. If it's like high stakes, action packed, I need to know what happens because my anxiety can't take it. And so that's why I also find comfort in rereading books, rewatching movies, because I like knowing what happens and I like to pick up smaller details that I didn't quite pick up before. So that's why I don't ever mind either watching a series and then reading the book or vice versa. I like to do it. I love rewatching this show. But yeah, like I said, it's just, I found myself in these characters so much and I could really resonate. And if you kind of grew up with any sort of anxiety or trauma or anything like that, you'll find comfort in this book, I'm pretty sure. And it's not that big. It's really easy to read. The text is really big. Her style of writing is actually quite different as well. It's quite unique in a nice way. And I find that with Jessa Hastings when she wrote Magnolia Parks. I found her writing style a bit unique as well. And I love that. I love seeing an author write slightly differently to the norm, but still write something completely gripping, easy to understand and easy to follow. So yeah, that is why I'm still thinking about this book and why I still rewatch the TV series. So I loved this book and I highly recommend it. And then another book that is on the best books I've read in 2023 is a really unexpected one. And I've mentioned this one before. I realised that a lot of these books I would have already spoken about on this channel because they feature in some of my monthly reading wrap-ups, but also I've done a video on my favourite books. So you'll see some familiar ones and some OG recommendations from me, but I cannot not add them into this ultimate 2023 favourite book video. So this is kind of another sort of coming of age, emotional type book. Those really do grip me and I think those are why I love them so much. Like I love an emotional book and I think I'm gonna find a theme. Now I'm thinking about it and I know the ones I've picked for this video, I think there's gonna be a theme here where I love to be emotionally put through my paces, I would say. Great Alone follows Lenny. She's 13 and her dad and her mum move her to a really remote small town in Alaska, and there she has like really traumatic family dynamics with an abusive dad, and she is dealing with moving to such a snowy remote place where there's not many people and then also there's hardly any daylight. Like that really stuck with me and I'm still thinking about this, how they literally in the peak of winter would get a few hours of daylight, and so that can be quite triggering for her dad and the way he would struggle with his mental health. And it's how she's dealing with an abusive dad and she's not got a difficult relationship with her mum if I remember, but I think her mum loves her dad so much that I don't think that she necessarily would have made the best decisions for Lenny because of her love for her dad outweighed protecting her daughter. But then that kind of flips and you just kind of go through that struggle, and then she meets a boy in her class at school called Matthew, and they are the only two people in the same year. Like I think they have school in like a hut. They're in school together, they sort of fall in love and they have a connection, and as the family situation escalates and issues with the town escalate and all of that, without going into anything too much or spoiling it, they really rely on each other and they fall for each other and try to be together kind of against the odds. It's just beautiful. I never saw the ending coming. I never ever saw what would happen at the end of this book, and I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to spoil it, but it picks you up, it spits you back out, it breaks your heart, it puts it back together, and you're left at the end feeling emotionally damaged but good. So that is why I love this book, and I expected nothing from this. This was part of my TBR challenge and it's been on my shelf for so long, and I don't really love the cover, so I think I was never really driven to pick this book up before. And in my head I thought it was a historical fiction, and I don't really love historical fictions, but then it wasn't. It's very like small town romance, emotion, just really gripping and just perfection. So I would say if you want an emotional read, if you liked Normal People, then you'll probably like this book as well. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. Ultimate favourite, love this book. And another ultimate favourite, sticking to the emotional trauma-filled, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking book, would be Binding 13, but the entire Boys of Tommen series. But this book is so thick, the series is so thick that I was not going to carry these and try and hold them. But I do mention this book in the last video that I posted, which is my favourite books of all time, so I won't go into the story too much. If you want to know what this book is about, check out that video, and I'll have the same with a couple of other of these books that are going to make this video. But I would say this is the OG book that I constantly talk about whenever the bar is set for like 5-star reads or like my ultimate favourite. This is the centre of that. I judge how much I love a book based upon my reaction compared to this book, because it's really thick, right? And the pages are so small. I don't know if I'm doing it right. They're so small. I had to get it on Kindle, and I also have the audiobook, and I have the old indie version paperbacks, and you can bet I will be buying the new covers of these books. I'm just trying to be really disciplined at the moment, but I want the new ones. So I have every possible version of this book that you can get. Like, I love it so much. Follows Johnny and Shannon. It's at school. Same sort of theme with like abusive family. Johnny really looks out for her, is very, very protective, but in a really sweet and non-toxic way. Perfect. And then, so the first two books follow Johnny and Shannon, and they go through sort of high school, and Johnny's like a really good rugby player. Shannon is really shy, and he brings her out of her shell. He tries to get her to fully live her life again and make decisions for herself. And he has a really lovely family that sort of come together and support Shannon and her really cute younger siblings. And she also has an older sibling, Joey, who is in the second two books of this series, which is Saving Six and Redeeming Six, and it follows Joey and Aoife. Those two are also my favourite book couple of all time as well. So are Johnny and Shannon. Like, I gunned my head, I couldn't pick either. Maybe Johnny and Shannon, because you know when you first read a book and you start the whole series and the first book is absolutely amazing and the books just stay on that pedestal and they stay that good, you get so emotionally invested. So I think because these are the OG couple that I first met, they might slightly go ahead of Joey and Aoife, but no, I love them all. So Joey is Shannon's older brother, but he's kind of in and out of trouble because he's trying to look after the family and help sort of his mum and his siblings because the dad is awful. But he lands himself into some trouble, and it's like how Aoife's relationship with him brings him out of that and shows him kind of the light or whatever. But just the books are perfect. Some people get really put off by how thick these books are, but thank me later, pick up these books, you will find that they're not long enough. And if you do still really struggle with the length of the book, the audiobooks are utterly incredible. Like, the Irish accent, I just love it. And I'm definitely going to reread it in 2024. So if you do anything out of this whole book thing, get this book, read this book. If you haven't already, you will not regret it. More emotional damage in the way of a Rebecca Yarros book, The Last Letter. I spoke about this on, which month did I read this? I can't remember, but I spoke about it in another monthly reading wrap up. I wasn't expecting anything of it. I read it on audiobook and it's just perfect. It's essentially about a woman called Ella who has two kids and she's a single mother, and she's got, I think they're twins. Are they twins? Yes, the two siblings are twins. And Ella's brother is a military soldier, but he dies in war, and he asks in his last letter his friend to go to the hometown where his sibling is, Ella, to help her raising the kids because he worries about, I guess, like leaving her alone. Even though he's been off to war, she was really his only family, I think, if I can remember correctly. And so he's like, Beckett, please go and see my sister, see if she needs anything. She'll be going through it with my death. So he kind of goes, he tries to help Ella in any way he can with the kids, but also with her life. And it's just beautiful perfection, really, really emotionally damaging. Some people do criticize this book and they say at the end, because it's horrific, like your heart breaks. That's why I'm still thinking about it, was because of the plot twist in this. And when you get to it, you'll be like, it like literally breaks you. I was stood there listening to the audiobook crying in floods of tears. It's like so horrible, but some people criticize it. Like, I read some of the Goodreads reviews and people were like, it was too much. They didn't need to go that far in the emotional trauma. But you know me, I love an emotional book. I lapped it up, trauma and everything. So this book will destroy you. It will break your heart in so many ways. And so I really recommend it on that basis. If you really like a gut-wrenching, 1,000 boy kisses type book, pick this one up. The next book, Verity. Very different to the other books that I just spoke about. It's a thriller, and it's the first thriller that I ever read. And the reason that I love it is because I'm still thinking about some of the creepy scenes in this book, and I'm surprised that it made this best books of 2023. But the reason that I think it did is because, like I said, I'm still thinking about it, and I think that is how I base whether these 5-star books that I rated make it to this best of 2023, because if I was still thinking about it months after reading it, it clearly did something to me, and that's all you could ever want from a book, right? So that is why this one is on here. And I forgot to say at the beginning, actually, you're probably like, what's the difference between your video, which is your favorite books of all time, but your favorite books of 2023? My favorite books of all time, I actually filmed that in summer, even though it got released later in December. But the reason that there's a difference is because some of those books that are on the video that I posted last week, I read them before 2023, whereas some of these books, and actually the majority of these books, looking at them now, I hadn't read when I'd filmed that video. So these are the favourite books of 2023, but that video is like my favourite books of all time. So those books are not just contending with the year that I read them, but ever since I started reading again, those ones are my like ride or die favourite staples that I always recommend to people. Whereas these ones are the ones that I read in 2023 and I'm still thinking about today when I reflect on this year of reading and how I felt about those books and how I rated them. So that's the difference. And there are actually, surprisingly, a fair few different books in here. I'd say, I think there's only, I'm going to count now, I think maybe only 4 of the books in this video would have been on that video. So interesting that they make the best books of 2023, but they might not have made the best books of all time, but also didn't read all of them yet. So that's why. Anyway, back to Verity. So Lowen arrives at this house because the husband of this wife is asking her, so Lowen's an author and he wants her to finish his wife's book because his wife got into an accident and is, I think, paralysed, and so she can't finish her book, and she's a really high profile author and the fans are screaming for another one of her books, but she hasn't finished it yet. So Lowen goes to their family home and tries to find inspiration and tries to finish this book, and there's a cute kid involved in this book, but also like really creepy twists and turns. I wouldn't read this if you're home alone. Like, I live by myself, and so I had to read this at my parents' house because I couldn't do it by myself. When you get to the scene on the stairs, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, it basically kind of uncovers the wife's accident and all of those sort of dynamics and those mysteries and everything. And they're just living in this creepy house. Honestly, I still think about half of these scenes, but if you told me what this book is about, I couldn't really do a deep dive more than what I've just said, but I would highly recommend it. It's one of Colleen Hoover's best books, and some people are over the Coho hype now, but I really love her. I think she's great. Maybe Someday was one of the books, which I can't believe. I filmed the video last week, the best books of all time. I finished it, edited it, and was like, I can't believe I didn't mention Maybe Someday on that video. I don't think I did. And Maybe Someday was the book alongside the After series that got me back into reading in lockdown. It was one of those books. And so for that, I will always read a Coho book. I love her. But some people say she's really like been there, done that. Like, everyone was obsessed with her in lockdown and they feel like their reading tastes have evolved since her. I still think she's a great author. I think everything she writes is really easy to read and really easy to follow. I will never rate a book lower if the writing isn't great. Like, a lot of people say they found mistakes in some of her books or they find her writing really simple. I love that, and I will never judge a writing or a book. Like, I will never judge a book based on its writing unless it's like so bad that it's hard to enjoy the book. Obviously then I would not enjoy it and not rate it highly. But if the writing is simple, love that. It's so easy to pick up a book and put it back down if the writing is simple, and that's actually what I strive to do with the books that I write. I always try and make sure that my books that I've self-published and I'm writing now have simple language, are really easy to read and follow, because it's just so easy to then suck yourself back into that world. So love simple writing, love Coho, and this was the first book that was sort of outside of my romance genre that I always read. So this and my fantasy reading that I did recently really got me out of my shell and my comfort zone with romance books. So I am so grateful for this book for sort of pushing me out of my comfort zone, and I loved it, and the scenes have stuck with me. It's creepy. Don't read it when you're home alone. Not very big, really easy to get through, so really rate this book. And then another book is the first book in the Dirty Air series. It's the best book in the Dirty Air series. I can't remember if this is in my favourite books of all time, but it is definitely one of the best books I read this year. So I'm not sure if I mentioned it previously. I think I have spoken about this book, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but it follows Maya and Noah. Noah is an F1 racer. Maya is the sister of Noah's racing partner. They're on the same team together. And this kicks off the Dirty Air series, and then it follows loads of different couples. So they're standalone books, but in the same series, and the characters weave in and out of each other's books. This was incredible. I love a sports romance. I just loved the aesthetic of Maya and Noah. Like, I kept looking at aesthetic videos on TikTok for this couple for ages. I was obsessing over this book, and that's why it made the best books of 2023 for me, because if I'm still thinking about it, if I'm still stalking the couple that don't even exist in real life on social media, you know it's a good book. It's not as lighthearted as I thought it would be, and that's why I loved it, because like I've said before, I'm obsessed with emotional books that give me emotional damage. I ate this up, and I love a self-published author. I also love that Lauren Asher, and I've said this before, I think, I love the way she has a couple and they are okay alone, but they really bring themselves together and they build themselves up and they're better as a couple. And I just love seeing like a powerhouse couple. I love seeing supportive partners, non-toxic relationships, which I think Lauren Asher is actually really good at doing. And that theme kind of continues. And yeah, I spoke about that when I read Redeemed, which is the 4th book and the last book in this series. And that is with Maya's older brother Santiago, and those 2 books are the best books in the series, number 1 and number 4. So I would say, if you haven't read this series, I think a lot of people already have, but if you haven't, watch a few aesthetic videos on TikTok after this and you will be so persuaded to read it. I'll be surprised if you haven't ordered it after doing a bit of a TikTok stalk of this couple. And then to quickly fly through this one, because this was on last week's video, this is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. It is the off-campus series, and again, it was one of those books where I was stalking the couple on TikTok, even though they don't exist in real life. Sports romance, ice hockey romance. This got me started in my ice hockey romance phase. So if you love a bit of ice hockey in your books, or just sports in general in your romance books, pick this up. Really easy to read. Amazing couple. I loved their banter. So yeah, if you want to know more about this one and my thoughts on it, other than that it just had all the tropes and the whole scene of college romance, sports romance, ice hockey, couple that really just become better together and they bring each other, they lift each other up, this is the book for you. Love this series. It's such an OG book talk, booktube recommendation, I would say. So yeah, love this one. And the last book that overlaps from last week's video and this week's video is Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. Love this book because I listened to the audiobook, and Christian Hems, his voice, the actor that played him, obsessed. It's such a great book. I loved it way more than Magnolia Parks because I found the first Magnolia Parks a bit too toxic, but I haven't picked up the other 2 books in this series yet, and I still haven't done it. Like, I read this in summer and I'm still yet to pick up the remaining books and finish them. I want to do it in audiobook, and I might listen to the first book again because I can get it on my Scribd or Everand, whatever you want to call it. I can get it on that, so I wouldn't be paying beyond my subscription to listen to it again. So I might re-listen to these books and then go into the 3rd and the 4th ones, because apparently the series just gets better and better. But if you want to know what this book is about, more than what I've just said, check out my video from last week because it goes into it more. But get the audiobook. His voice is amazing. Moving on to brand new books that didn't feature in last week's video because I read them after filming it, is The Right Move by Liz Tomford. I don't know if it's Liz Tomford or Tom Fordy, because the audiobook actress that read this book said it as Tom Fordy, but then everyone I've seen on TikTok says Tom Ford. So sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. But this is the 2nd book in, is it called the Windy Air series? I can't remember the name of this series, but The Right Move is 2nd, and then Mile High is 1st. And I read that. I read both of them on audiobook, but Mile High I finished, really enjoyed it. I rated it 5 stars, but this is like a superior 5 stars. Everybody is obsessed with Ryan, and I mentioned it in one of my TikTok shorts as well when I bought this book, because the book boyfriend Ryan in this is everything you could ever want in a book boyfriend. His love language is acts of service, and you see that the whole way through. And even when he doesn't realise he's in love with her and you can see through the actions that he is, it's just amazing. So it follows Ryan and Indy. Indy is Indy is Ryan's sister's best friend. I got there eventually. But the first book follows Ryan's sister, and you see Ryan's sister throughout this book as well, which is really nice. But essentially, Indy moves into Ryan's apartment because she finds out that her boyfriend of 6 years has been cheating on her, and he is typical grumpy. I think it's like grumpy sunshine, I would say this trope is. He is such a recluse. He is a famous basketball player, but he's so high profile celebrity that he doesn't really leave the house. He's a bit of a recluse, and he went through stuff in his past life that this book kind of unpacks and uncovers, and it kind of explains why he is the way he is. And Indy is kind of this ray of emotional sunshine. I love it. And just walks into his apartment and is a bit of like a tornado and just comes in and turns his life upside down, but obviously for the better. And she's kind of getting over the cheating relationship and her mistrust in men, and then Ryan has massive mistrust of women and sort of only really hangs out with his sister and her boyfriend. And the first book is an ice hockey romance. This one is a basketball romance, and the tropes are close proximity, sports romance, he falls first and falls harder. What are the other tropes? There are so many in this, but like in a good way. It's not like a trope dump, it's perfection. Oh, fake dating. How could I forget? They end up fake dating. That's like the whole premise of this book, but the fake dating is quite good. They've done it really well. I love like fake dating or marriage of convenience. It's the best. So yeah, loved this book. Ryan is just the utter most perfect book boyfriend ever, and so that's why I would recommend this book. If you want to be obsessed with a man and be thinking about them and they don't even exist, this is the one. He is so amazing. And I haven't yet done the TikTok aesthetic stalking of this couple, but I think I will do. I've only recently read it. I finished it this week, so yeah, really loved this book. Perfect. So the last books in this video are the Fourth Wing series, so Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I loved this series, and I'm so excited for the third book to come out. Much like everybody on BookTube, BookTok ate this series up, and rightly so. If you're someone that was like me this year, where they were only reading romance or contemporary romance books and they want to expand their like genre horizons, I would 100% recommend, if you want to get into fantasy, start with this series, because it was a great mix of romance and fantasy, but also the world building was great. The way that the author built the tension up, it was really great, because my first fantasy series or romantasy series was ACOTAR, and I didn't love it, and I'm actually so gutted that I didn't love it compared to everybody else. But I think had I started with this kind of eased me into reading a different genre and not reading something that was set in like modern day. Well, I don't know when like the era of this is, but like, you know, like normal real life day to day, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Contemporary world, I guess. I was so used to that, and so changing that up with the ACOTAR world was actually really hard to wrap my head around. And maybe I'll do a reread of it, but maybe it just wasn't my cup of tea, and that is totally okay. But this, oh my goodness, totally my cup of tea. I also have the Fourth Wing Waterstone special edition of this book, which is incredible. I'm yet to read the chapters which is Zaden's point of view in this book, but incredible. This book is enemies to lovers, and it is a bit of a slow burn, but really good. I'd say the balance of romance to fantasy and world building is perfection. And then this book kind of carries on and shows the struggle that the main character Violet and the love interest Zaden have as they go through all the difficulties they have in the world that they're living in, plus the struggles they have in their romantic relationship. So amazing. And I also am so in love with Zaden. I think that Rebecca did a great job at sort of creating this really alpha male character that also just really backed Violet. And again, I love an alpha male main character that can really support and not undermine the female main character, and just build them up and want the best for them and push them to their limits and out of their comfort zone, which I think a lot of the men in these books did, maybe minus normal people. But the book that I was just mentioning, Right Move, Ryan really gets Indy out of her comfort zone, and I feel like that's the same with these two books. I think Zaden really pushes Violet to reach her full potential, and it's just perfect. And I know that I've spoken about these books in reading wrap-ups, but these would actually have made last week's video had I actually read them by the point that I'd filmed that. So yeah, going out with a bang by ending this saying, I should put it this way around, I think that's the right way around for you. These were a top read of 2023 and would have probably made last week's video, like I mentioned. But yeah, obsessed. So that wraps up the best books that I read in 2023. But I should also say, reminder that Binding 13 covers the entire Boys of Tommen series, so it's not just these, and none of this was in any particular order. I loved all of them, and they all stuck with me and have occupied space in my brain for the entire of 2023, and will probably continue to occupy space in my mind and my heart through to next year. So these were not just 5-star reads, but probably the ones that really stuck with me, like I mentioned before, and I really do recommend reading them. Those and the books that I mentioned in my video last week. You coming to say bye? Come on then. So those two videos together, if you want my ultimate book recommendations at this moment in time, that would be it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of these books yourself and what you thought of them, or if you know any books that because I loved these you'll know I love. Please make sure to recommend them to me. I definitely want some amazing book recommendations as I go into 2024, because these books on my shelf here, this is my TBR, and it's actually, compared to a lot of people, not that big. That's all I've got. So if you see anything else that you think I would like to read and I should add to that TBR, do let me know. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.